YouTube, what the crap's going on? HeirofCarthage here, back on Total War Rome 2. Today we're going to do another faction focus. I'll do it a little bit backwards today. We'll watch the battle first. We're going to be talking about Bactria today. And I'm going to go up against my beloved Carthage here. And the Carthaginian player does something very weird in my opinion. He brings a main line of hoplites. He does have sword support. But Carthage definitely has a sword supremacy over Bactria, and they have plenty of skirmishing to knock out elephants. So I'm really surprised to not see Carthage taking advantage of that sword situation. I would think hoplites as a main line would be better against factions that lack good swords, so that then they can be more versatile versus infantry and cavalry. But Bactria is definitely going to have access to thorax swords, and they will definitely make use of them. Now, on the other hand, my opponent has two mercenary noble fighters, and these guys are capable of killing a lot of thorax swords, and the Libyan infantry are kind of a match for him. So he's not totally outmatched in the infantry department, but it's going to make it tough for him. I do have... so let's just talk a little bit about the armies. Again, my opponent, hoplite corps, 4 swords, a couple of Cretan archers, and I believe 4 Carthaginian cav. I've got 3 mercenary Scythian horse. These guys have great missile attack and are really cheap, so I'm going to go harass the crap out of the Carthaginian cav. He can screen with his Libyans, but Libyans do not have javelins, and so it makes it a little bit tougher for Carthage. I actually like to use Iberian swordsmen. Not necessarily to screen horse archers because they're so weak to missiles, but I like to keep some of them around, and then if I get a chance you can chuck those javelins at enemy cav. But right away I roll up with my horse archers and kill 7 Carthaginian cav on the first couple of volleys because their backs were turned to me, and then I'm going to kill some more of them here. So I'm going to do a lot of harassment with my my Scythian horse, and it's going to force the Carthaginian player to move forward while under fire. Because he's not going to want to just sit around and take this. He is using his Cretans to fend me off. It's a good choice. They got long range, and where I don't pay attention, like right here, I lost 7 horse archers, so I'm forced back. But I get a lot of kills. Kind of dodged that volley there, fortunately. So foot skirmishers can potentially fend off horse archers. I would think that slingers are better at it. Archers, it seems like the bow shots travel a little slower. As Bactria, let's take a look at my main line. I have 7 thorax swords and a Bactrian royal guard. No, 8 thorax swords, because I expected a lot of swords from Carthage. So yeah, I have a huge infantry line for Bactria, and then I'm backing them up with 4 Bactrian noble horse. So I have a clear cav advantage, and because my opponent brought hoplites, I have a clear infantry advantage as well. And my opponent holds the skirmishing advantage, kind of, with his Cretans, but mine are more mobile with my horse archers, so I honestly feel like because of my opponent's pick here, he gave me the advantage in all 3 categories, both skirmishing, infantry, and cav. My Bactrian Royal Guard is a very strong hoplite and capable of matching all but the noble fighters as far as the Carthaginian infantry is concerned. So my opponent's going to go ahead and engage me with his, he's going to meat shield up some late Libyans here. That's not a bad plan. It'll keep me from getting a couple of charges with some of my better units like these Bactrian Royals, because the Libyans have engaged them. So not a bad plan there. I'm going to try where I can to get some counter charge. Actually, no, I think I just let my guys throw their javelins here, because I'm not really concerned about the charge of hoplites. Go ahead and put my Bactrian Royal Guard into phalanx. And the enemy put his noble fighters on his right. He's yet to engage them. The problem for this engagement with Carthage is they don't have anything to follow up with killing power. There's no elephant, and his hoplites are going to lose in a straight up engagement, so he really needed to use his noble fighters and his Cretans to good effect, and so far that's not happening. I'm killing his Carthaginian cav on these flanks. My Sarmatian horse are threatening his Cretans and keeping his other cavalry busy, and then his mercenary noble fighters were about to, and they are going to kind of get a good charge here, but I'm also going to partly get that charge intercepted with Bactrian noble horse right away. So noble fighters are going to rack up some kills on the charge versus my thorax swords, but then my noble horse is going to really kind of make them pay for that a little bit, and I can continue to rear charge. Meanwhile, my opponent has not been able to outflank me, and he hasn't been able to punch through yet. His mercenary noble fighters would have been good in the center where they could have punched through or tried to kill my general. They definitely could have killed my general. Otherwise, they're going to get held down here on the flanks. My cavalry is now free to support my thorax swords, and my cavalry's already rear charging the noble fighters over here. The noble fighters will beat my thorax swords, but I can at least slow them down and damage them in the process. And again, my bow horse being a huge nuisance for Carthage. And here, whenever the Carthaginian cav gets pulled away, I'm able to charge into his Cretans, and his Cretans are not able to play a role in the battle where they are badly needed. My Bactrian Royal Guard is beating down these Carthaginian hoplites, and then the rear charges again into the noble fighters. The noble fighters are destroying my thorax swords as expected, but they're taking damage in the process from my noble horse, and now the Carthaginian general has been caught by my noble horse, which is very bad. So all the Carthaginian cav is dead. My horse archers have his Cretans tied down in melee, and I can now get reinforcing cavalry into here to finish them. And then my rear charges and shots are going to continue. My mercenary Sarmatians here are targeting the noble fighters at point blank range, and they are in heavy shot. So I'm going to start making the noble fighters pay. And over here, the noble fighters have yet to break through a single piece yet because of the rear charges from my cavalry. So again, the engagement's not going very well for my opponent. Rear charge from Bactrian Noble Horse here. They are quite good at this because they are very heavy cavalry, and they can knock a lot of infantry units over on the rear charge. They're good at punching through thin infantry formations. They're very good at crushing skirmishers, and they're also very good at beating down enemy cavalry. So Bactrian Noble Horse is definitely one of the stronger tools that Bactria has available. They are not cheap, but they are quite powerful for a cav unit. Very nice armor on them, and just good stats in general for the most part. So yeah, enemy skirmishers are dead. Again, see my mercenary Sarmatian horse here just standing behind the noble fighters, pouring heavy shot in at point blank range. So that's going to be very bad for the noble fighters. And you can see the morale is already suffering because the Carthaginian general has died and they are not disciplined. And with the death of the general, combined with these rear charges, the Carthaginian troops are going to start to falter. My general finished destroying that Carthaginian hoplite with relatively few losses, and the rest of the Carthaginian hoplites are being killed. The noble infantry noble fighters finally break through, but now they're going to get rear charged by my Bactrian noble horse again. So after this many rear charges, and they're now very tired, they are going to start to die in these situations. So the Carthaginian is definitely just getting wrapped up. The Libyan infantry, as you can see here, did quite well versus my thorax swords, and a main line composed of them would have been much more dangerous to me rather than the hoplites. And elephants can be difficult to use against Bactria as well because they have access to foot and horse skirmishers of good quality. So I think the Carthaginian would have been best suited here for a sword rush that was well supported by javelin-bearing units like Gallic warriors and Iberians. And then those units could have supported his cavalry as well and done pretty good in supporting cav. You could even throw in a couple of late Libyan hoplites to help with that. So I think Carthage does have the tools to deal with Bactria, and Bactria also has the tools to deal with Carthage, one way or the other, however you look at it. But in this case, I think I was able to use some of Bactria's best tools, like their noble horse. You can see all of mine did quite well. These Sarmatian horse archers, or Scythian horse archers, sorry, doing a great job. All of my swordsmen did pretty good holding, except for the ones that got attacked by noble fighters, and my general, again, got into the kind of combat that he's good at. On the other hand, for the Carthaginian, this mercenary noble fighter did pretty well, all things considered. This one really not doing so well. But yeah, you can see his infantry was just no match for mine here, and his cavalry was no match, and the support for them just wasn't there when it needed to be. These late Libyans could potentially have turned the fight against my Bactrian nobles, but since they weren't nearby for the support of those cav fights, his cav was able to get singled out and destroyed. Again, these can be very handy units for supporting that. So that's a little bit of Bactria in combat. Now let's go talk a little bit about their roster and the type of things they're going to be good at. Now back in the day, when I probably made my first faction focus on Bactria, they were a power faction. Bactria is no longer a power faction just because the terms of power have changed. They are not a power faction mainly because barbarian sword spam has become the strongest builds that you can see in the game, and elephants are a lot more easily dealt with because there's so many units with precursor javelins. This is what's kind of knocked Bactria off of its perch as one of the power factions. Also, Bactrian Noble Horse took a bit of a nerfing. I think they've always been about this price, but they used to have like 49 attack or something really high. And back in the day when melee cav was still a lot more viable versus infantry, Bactria was just horrible to try and deal with. They could just basically bring elephants, horse archers, and noble horse, and there wasn't a whole lot you could do about it. And that was also back in the day when thorax swords were a lot more useful. So again, over time, as the mechanics of the game have changed, it has definitely moved Bactria down the list of power factions to where they're not there anymore, but they are still a viable faction in many respects, and let's cover that. So, Bactrian Royal Guard is a strong hoplite unit. They are a little cheaper than some of the other elite hoplites, but they also have a little less melee attack and weapon damage. Very nice charge bonus, though, for a hoplite unit, and they also have access to Frenzied Charge, which I don't actually think helps your charge a lot, but I think that if what Wolf of Remus told me is right, kind of the hidden bonus of this Frenzied Charge is it actually makes your unit unbreakable temporarily, which I don't think Frenzied Charge actually helps you a lot on the charge as much as it does there. They do also have Expert Charge defense, so if they were going to be charged by lightly armored, high charge units like, say, Thracian Warriors or Celtic Warriors or something like that, if they hold their ground and use the Expert Charge defense, they will do very well. Though one way or the other, not against Thracian Warriors, but against Celtic Warriors with a charge bonus of 29, these guys would probably win anyway pretty handily. You know, just a good unit overall. Hoplite Wall as well. Bactrian Royal Cav is a pretty decent shot cavalry unit. Their armor's not particularly high, but most shot cav aren't. Decent melee defense for a shot cav, and actually a very nice charge bonus. This is a decent unit, and shot cavalry can be very handy, but they also have access to Hellenic cataphracts, which we'll cover here later. Indian war elephants, obviously these armored elephants are insanely powerful, and if you can get them in the right situations, they are very strong. Choosing one as your general can sometimes be okay, but you gotta remember your general's there, and elephants are pretty easy to deal with. I say pretty easy to deal with. There's a lot of units that can counter them, so be careful about putting your general in that unit. Again, so hillmen here. Bactrian hillmen look like they cost more than other hillmen. I just noticed that. Let's pull up Pontus because they have hillmen as well. So let's reset that. Yeah, 220, 25, 26, 28, 26. So a little bit more attack. Let's take a look at a few of those other stats real quick. 12, 36, 15, 45, 35, 10, 36, 15, 45, 25. So you have to pay more, and you basically just end up trading a little extra attack, but for less charge. That doesn't make a lot of sense, and I don't know if the Bactrian hillmen have javelins. I do know the others do. If the Bactrian hillmen have javelins, then they will basically be the same thing. Cheap units with javelins can be very handy. As I just mentioned, they can throw their javelins at elephants, they can throw them at chariots, they can throw them at cavalry. Cheap units with javelins are a good deal in the game, great if used properly. Thorax swords are a decent mid-tier sword. I say decent. They're actually pretty crappy in the world of mid-tier swords if you're going to compare them to units like Sword Followers and Fierce Swords and pretty much everything else out there. Thorax swords, what they lack in attack, they make up for with good melee defense and armor, and they also have shield wall. They are just not a very strong offensive unit, but they do provide a backbone for armies. Eastern Spearmen, I don't see a lot of point in these guys. They are fairly worthless. Some people swear by them. Is not swear by them as in they're good, but they like using them for certain functions. I think they're all around worthless, even with their low price. What can they do? They're not going to hurt cav. They're not going to slow down infantry for more than 2 seconds. I mean, these guys just suck. I don't see the purpose of them unless you just really enjoy seeing them get killed on the battlefield. Again, some people may disagree with me here, and that's fine. I just haven't found a use for them. Thurio Spears, these are very useful units. They've been mentioned in others. No difference between the Bactrian Thurio Spears and others. Decent charge bonus for a spear unit, which makes them handy at charging into a cav fight after it's started. They can throw javelins at horses. They have square. Very good unit to have in the roster of Bactria. Scale Thorax Hoplites we've seen before too with Athens. Kind of a mid-tier hoplite. I thought Athens had these guys. I could be wrong. I think they do. Let me just make sure I'm not telling you wrong. No, they just have Thurios hoplites. So these are scale Thurios, or scale Thorax hoplites. So, sorry, different deal. Pretty good melee attack for a hoplite, especially a mid-tier one. Weapon damage, though, is nothing special. Very good melee defense, though, also for a hoplite at that price. It's just their armor's not bad, but their health and base morale is nothing special. In phalanx, though, these guys could hold for a while, so a potentially useful unit, decent charge bonus. These Bactrian Royal Guard we already discussed. Bactria has access to 3 different tiers of pikes: levy, pikemen, and thorax. These guys are going to be more useful to you in campaign, but I mean in multiplayer battles sometimes pikes can play a role. It's hard. I don't recommend them for beginners, and pikes have a very limited role in multiplayer, so it does give them that flexibility, but it's flexibility saying that in the same sentence as pikes is kind of an oxymoron. So Persian light archers, a great unit to have in your roster as well. Eastern javelins, again, high missile damage. These guys are pretty susceptible to return fire, but still potentially very useful versus elephants or chariots. Eastern slingers are a great slinger unit for the price. They have slightly better attack than most cheap slingers, and again, all slingers come with a shield, which makes them good at trading fire at long range. Peltist and light peltist, both. This one's going to give you more armor and staying power. This one's going to give you more ammo, depending on what you might want out of them. Bactria and peltist, combine the two, you get tons of ammo and good armor. So this is actually a very interesting, unique unit to Bactria and can be very useful in the right scenarios. Mercenary Syrian archers and then elite Persian archers. Always go with the mercenary Syrians. The elite Persian archers do have a spear, but because of their low armor, they're going to get wrecked by pretty much any cavalry that gets into them on the charge. Now, if light cavalry were to stick around and melee with them, it could go quite poorly, but you're paying a lot of money for a unit that could potentially just get wrecked anyway. So it's very risky, whereas the Syrian archers actually have some armor, and they can stick around in a fight a lot better than the Persian archers. Now, the Persian archers do have a little more health and morale, but again, I really feel like the Syrian archers would be a better pick. So, Bactrian Royal Cav, we've mentioned. Hellenic Cataphracts. I really wish they would decrease the price on the Hellenic Cataphracts to make factions like Bactria and the Seleucids a little more dangerous. I really would like to see Hellenic Cataphracts reduced in price to probably like 1100, and I think that would make an interesting dynamic there, because then it would give these factions access to pretty dang tough shock cavalry at a fair price, and it would make them a little more dangerous. That may be too drastic, I don't know, I'm just throwing that out there, but Hellenic Cataphracts don't do well against Eastern Cataphracts, especially when you factor in the price. And it makes them definitely a potential unit. And sometimes what I like to do, when you pick Bactria, a lot of people think that you're going to bring elephants. So a lot of times they'll bring a lot of skirmishers thinking, oh, he's going to bring elephants, I'll take care of them. So a lot of times what I'll do instead of bringing the elephants is I'll just bring a Hellenic Cataphract and keep it hidden for late game. And if the opponent's cavalry gets taken out by your good Bactrian noble horse, you can then pull out the Hellenic Cataphract in late game and cycle charge enemy units into oblivion. So they can be useful against infantry-heavy factions if you're able to gain that cavalry supremacy, and if you're not going to be horribly outnumbered by infantry by the end of it as well. So that's about the only use I find for Hellenic Cataphracts at the moment. Cavalry-wise, you got Bactrian Light Horse, which is a decent light horse unit, nothing special, but they're cheap. Citizen Cavalry is another one of those that there's other names for them floating around, and I'm sure you've seen them in the comments. Since I don't swear, I can't repeat it, but I do find the name quite entertaining, and you can put two and two together, swear word that kind of rhymes itself into the name. I'm sure that someone will say it for me. But yes, and I do find that name entertaining and quite fitting, as Citizen is definitely a title that's probably over-deserving for cavalry that sucks this bad. Bactrian Noble Horse we've already mentioned. They are very good. They have been nerfed over time, but still a very potentially useful unit for Bactria. They are heavy melee cav, so they're good at knocking over infantry. They should be able to get in the way of chariots, so definitely a useful unit. They have access to great horse skirmishers as well. You've got Mercenary Scythian Horse, which has great missile values, and then you've got this kind of Parthian-style horse archer over here that's lower missile damage, but has whistling shot. Otherwise, not a whole lot of difference between the two. Yeah, so just kind of depends on what you're going for there. Tarentine Cav Mercenaries could be useful as decent horse skirmishers. Then you got Bactrian Horse Archers, which these guys are going to come with really good melee attack and weapon damage. Decent armor, not great, but also 40 missile damage. So these guys are very expensive, but in the right circumstances could be handy. Just be careful, because that is pretty expensive for a horse archer, so you have to want to make sure you use them right. And then of course they have access to both Indian and armored Indian elephants. The unarmored ones could be useful if you're looking to save a little denarii but still pack a punch, and of course the armored ones could take more punishment, have a ton of hit points. Overall, as a faction, I think with Bactria you'd probably for the most part want to be fighting on open maps where you could make use of your horse archers. That's going to be one of their key strengths, is the ability to bring these horse archers and to use them against factions. They have access to shock cavalry. They don't have to use it though, because they have access to good melee cav. This is a little bit on the expensive side for melee cav, but it is very good at the same time. So I think that you definitely want to capitalize on Bactria's ability to skirmish, and because their swords aren't really going to do anything special for you. So you really got to capitalize on the cavalry and the skirmish with Bactria, and in my mind, both of those things are best done on open maps. So that's why I'm suggesting that they would be better there. Against the barbarian factions that have heavy sword spam like Arverni, Boii, or Tylus, it is going to be a difficult game for Bactria under any circumstances, even the best of circumstances, just because if you think about it, you can bring Bactrian noble cav or noble horse, which is better than heavy horse that those factions might be able to bring. Well, not Tylus, of course, but the other two. But they're more expensive as well, and you're already going to be struggling because sword followers of basically the same price as Thorax swordsmen are going to destroy them, and you're going to have to deal with Oathsworn. The only way you might be able to get ahead is with skirmishers, but that is still a dangerous game to play because you're most likely going to be facing 14 to 15 infantry units, sometimes a little more depending on what that player wants to bring, so it can be very challenging. So I would say Bactria is going to be better at when it's fighting against other successor kingdoms, Greek cities, Rome. Matches like that, it's going to be able to capitalize a little better than it would be against the barbarian sword spams. Again, I would also recommend open maps. Hope this was useful. Heir of Carthage signing off for now.